This is the third and final video for Module 3. You select distinct rows when you don't want duplicate row values in your result. So, for example, if we select patient ID from the appointment table, and I'm going to use this trick now where you highlight the row you want to run, we get 52 rows back. But some of these rows are duplicates because a few patients have more than one appointment scheduled. If we select the distinct patient ID from appointment, we get the number of patients who have appointments scheduled instead of a row for every appointment scheduled. We can see that there are 46 distinct patients in this appointment table. This comes in handy sometimes. If you have a lot of rows and you would rather not scroll through the entire set of results like we just did to see how many rows your query is returning, you can use the aggregate function count as I've done in this example here. That will just return one value, which is the number of rows that query is going to return. We'll look at more aggregate functions later on. So this statement gets the number of distinct rows from the appointment table. We can also do arithmetic in our queries, and I'll show you some examples so you're familiar with it, even though these examples may not be the most practical. So in this first example, we're selecting the patient ID and the doctor's staff ID from the appointment table, and then we have this column where we're going to add them together and we're aliasing it sum. Like I said, not the most practical example, but there are situations where you would need to do something like this with values that, when you added them together, would actually give you a useful number. And you can also do something similar where you add, subtract, multiply, or divide by some number. So in this example, we are selecting the patient ID in one column, and we're selecting another column that will be the patient ID with 5 added to it. And again, we're going to alias that column with the name sum. Very similarly, in this example, we're selecting the patient ID, then another column with patient ID divided by 5, and a third column that uses the modulo operator, which is indicated by the percent sign. You'll remember we use that percent sign as a wildcard in a like statement, but this is a completely different use here. What the modulo will get you is the remainder. So this query will get us the patient ID divided by 5, and then the remainder you'd get from dividing the patient ID by 5. Notice when I run this statement with no aliases for these calculated columns, no column name is displayed as the column name for both of those columns. That's why it's always good to use aliases for your calculated columns to be more descriptive. So here's a query where we're selecting the patient ID 5 times 3 with no parentheses, so this right here. And then patient ID minus 5 in parentheses times 3. And you'll see if you run this query that those last two columns return different values. In arithmetic expressions like this, the calculations are done according to the order of precedence. What that means is the math will be done from left to right, and the multiplication will be done first, then division, then modulo, then addition, then subtraction, unless we put our own parentheses in order to indicate the order in which we want the calculations done. So here in the first column, essentially it's subtracting 15 from patient ID because it multiplies 5 by 3, and then that gets subtracted from the patient ID. In the second example, we put parentheses around patient ID minus 5. So that will get done first, and then we'll multiply the result by 3. If it helps, in the first example, imagine there are parentheses around appointment ID less than 3025 and doctor staff ID equals 1112, because that's how it will be evaluated, the and part before the or. So to prove this, I'll run this statement, and then I'll add parentheses there. Run it again, and you'll see we got the exact same result. In the second example, we use parentheses to indicate that we would like the or evaluated first. So this part will be evaluated first. So if you look at the results for this one, they're all appointments for doctor staff ID 1112, and that doctor doesn't have any appointments at site greater than 4. So essentially this gets us all of Dr. 1112's appointments with appointment ID less than 3025. So go ahead and run these two statements and review the output for each. It'll also probably help to just play around with and or by writing your own test statements and reviewing the output. This is a little bit of a tricky concept if you haven't worked with it before. That's it for Module 3. See you in Module 4 when we'll learn about joins.